Imagine a place born from a powerful dream, a dream of freedom, dignity, and the chance to shape one's own destiny. Picture a land where hope could take root, far from the chains of oppression. This is the story of Liberia, a nation whose roots stretch across the vast Atlantic Ocean, connecting the shores of West Africa to the heart of America. It is a story of longing, courage, and the search for belonging. In the early 1800s, America was a land of liberty for some, but for millions of others, it was a place of bondage and unimaginable suffering. The contradiction was stark, freedom and slavery side by side. Many believed free black people had no future in America, facing discrimination and exclusion at every turn. So, they looked to Africa for a new beginning, a place to build lives on their own terms, with dignity and hope. The American Colonization Society, or ACS, was formed to turn this idea into reality. Its members were determined to create a new home for free black Americans, even as their reasons for doing so were complex and sometimes conflicting. The ACS was a strange alliance, a mix of abolitionists who hoped to end slavery and slaveholders who wanted to remove free black people from America. They were united by different motives, but a common plan: to send people across the ocean to start anew. They bought land on the West African coast, soon to be called Liberia, a place that would become a beacon for those seeking freedom. In 1822, the first settlers arrived, stepping onto a land both foreign and ancestral. For many, it was a return to a continent their ancestors had left centuries before, under the most tragic of circumstances. The journey was perilous, and the challenges, disease, hunger, and negotiation with indigenous peoples, were immense. Many perished, and survival demanded resilience, unity, and hope. This was not empty land. It was home to groups like the KRU, Gola, and VI, who had their own histories, cultures, and ways of life. The arrival of settlers brought new relationships and new tensions. The settlers named their new home Liberia, from the Latin for free, and their capital Monrovia, after U.S. President James Monroe, who supported their cause. For the settlers, this was more than a new home. It was a bold experiment in self-determination, a chance to prove their worth and build a society from the ground up. They aimed to prove that people of African descent could govern themselves, create laws, and build a nation that would stand as a testament to their resilience and vision. Liberia became a symbol of hope and freedom for black people everywhere, inspiring generations to dream of a better future. But from the start, the dream was complicated by the realities of prejudice, power, and the land's original inhabitants. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, shaping the nation's early years. The foundation was set for a nation born of both hope and contradiction, a place where the promise of freedom would be tested by the challenges of history, identity, and the struggle to truly belong. The first years in Liberia were a struggle for survival. The settlers faced numerous challenges, from unfamiliar terrain to limited resources. The Americo-Liberians brought American customs, building churches and homes reminiscent of the South. They tried to recreate a piece of America in Africa. But Africa was not America. Deadly diseases and harsh conditions claimed many lives. Malaria and other tropical diseases were rampant. Politically, the settlers quickly established a government modeled on the United States, declaring independence in 1847. They sought to create a democratic society. Joseph Jenkins Roberts became the first president, a moment of pride for the new nation. His leadership was seen as a beacon of hope. Yet the Americo-Liberians, a small minority, controlled the government and economy, seeing themselves as superior to the indigenous majority. This created a significant power imbalance. Indigenous communities were excluded from power and citizenship, their land often taken without fair compensation. They were marginalized in their own homeland. The dream of liberty was not extended to all, creating a society divided by class and origin. This division was deeply entrenched. Conflicts and resentment simmered as the settlers ruled, while the majority remained marginalized. Tensions were ever present. The promise of freedom was kept for some, but not for all. Many felt betrayed by the new order. This deep division would haunt Liberia for generations. The legacy of inequality and exclusion would shape its future. Americo-Liberian society blended Southern American culture with West African reality. They spoke English with a Southern lilt, wore formal clothes, and built their lives around churches and schools. This elite, never more than 5% of the population, held all political power for over a century. The true Whig Party dominated, ensuring the same families ruled and prospered. Indigenous Liberians were often forced into labor and excluded from opportunity, fueling resentment. The Congo people, as the elite were called, controlled resources and foreign ties, especially with the US. As more indigenous Liberians gained education, calls for change grew louder. The system of privilege and exclusion was unsustainable. The cracks in settler society were beginning to show. Liberia's economy was built on agriculture, but rubber changed everything. In the 1920s, Firestone leased 1 million acres, creating the world's largest rubber plantation and dominating the economy. This enclave economy made Liberia dependent on one company and one product. Iron ore, diamonds, gold, and timber brought more wealth, attracting foreign companies. Yet profits flowed mostly to the Americo-Liberian elite and foreign investors. Ordinary Liberians saw little benefit. Basic services remained scarce. The country's riches funded infrastructure in Monrovia, but deepened inequality. Most people remained poor, watching resources leave while their lives stayed the same. This vast gap between wealth and poverty fueled anger and frustration. Liberia's natural wealth became another source of division. The promise of prosperity was real, but only for a few. The nation's foundation was cracking under the weight of inequality. Liberian culture is a vibrant blend of indigenous traditions and settler customs. Liberian English, or Colloqua, mixes local languages and American influence, uniting the nation. Secret societies like the Poro and Sande teach culture, responsibility, and tradition, holding great influence in rural life. Music, dance, and storytelling are central. Drums and tales pass down history and values. Food, like rice with spicy stews, brings people together and reflects the country's diversity. Despite divisions, culture has always been a source of resilience and unity. The fusion of influences created a unique national identity. Liberia's spirit endures in its traditions, language, and shared stories. By the 1970s, Liberia's deep divisions were erupting, as decades of inequality and exclusion began to boil over into open discontent. The Americo-Liberian minority's control over politics, wealth, and opportunity left the indigenous majority frustrated, marginalized, and excluded from the nation's progress. Educated indigenous Liberians, inspired by global movements for justice, began demanding change, equality, and a voice in their own country's future. President William Tolbert tried to introduce reforms and open up the system, but his efforts were seen as too little, too late to address the deep wounds. In 1979, a proposed rice price hike, meant to benefit government officials, sparked massive protests known as the Rice Riots, drawing thousands into the streets. The unrest revealed the nation's simmering anger, as ordinary Liberians risked everything to demand change. In 1980, Master Sergeant Samuel Doe led a violent coup, killing Tolbert and ending 133 years of Americo-Liberian rule in a single night. Many celebrated Doe as a liberator, hoping his rise would finally bring equality, justice, and a new beginning for all Liberians. But Doe's regime quickly became corrupt and brutal, favoring his own Kron group and deepening the divisions he had promised to heal. Opposition was crushed, dissent silenced, and ethnic tensions deepened as violence and fear spread. Instead of healing, new divisions emerged, fracturing communities and fueling mistrust. The dream of a new Liberia faded into fear and violence, as hope gave way to chaos. The country was now on a path to civil war, with armed groups rising and the threat of conflict looming over every town. Hopes for unity and justice were dashed, replaced by uncertainty and sorrow. The seeds of conflict had fully taken root, setting the stage for years of turmoil and heartbreak to come. On Christmas Eve 1989, Charles Taylor launched a rebellion to overthrow Doe, igniting the First Liberian Civil War. The conflict quickly fractured into chaos, with multiple warlords and ethnic militias fighting for power. Civilians suffered most. Atrocities, child soldiers, and mass displacement became the norm. In 1990, Doe was killed, but the violence only intensified as factions battled for control and resources. Blood diamonds and timber fueled the war, while Monrovia descended into starvation and siege. International peacekeepers struggled to contain the anarchy. After years of failed peace, an election in 1997 brought Taylor to power, but peace was fragile. A second civil war erupted in 1999, bringing more destruction. By 2003, 250,000 were dead, and the country lay in ruins. The wars left deep scars, social, economic, and psychological. Liberia's nightmare had reached its darkest hour. The nation's survival was in question. In 2003, Liberia was shattered. No electricity, no government, and a traumatized people. Disarmament and UN peacekeepers began the slow process of rebuilding. In 2005, Liberians elected Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Africa's first female president, signaling a break from the violent past. Sirleaf faced enormous challenges, rebuilding infrastructure, restoring services, and fighting corruption. Her government secured debt relief and focused on roads, schools, and a new army. Gradually, hope returned. Lights flickered on, businesses reopened, and people felt safer. Yet the scars of war remained: poverty, unemployment, and a fragile justice system. In 2014, the Ebola outbreak struck, killing thousands and crippling healthcare. But Liberians showed resilience, uniting to defeat the disease with international help. The recovery was slow, but the spirit of the people endured. Liberia's journey from war to peace was remarkable. The nation proved its strength in the face of adversity. A new chapter was beginning. Today, Liberia stands as a testament to resilience and hope. The sounds of war have faded, replaced by construction, markets, and children's laughter. Challenges remain: fragile economy, corruption, and unhealed wounds. But progress is real. 2 decades of peace and a peaceful transfer of power in 2017 show democracy is taking root. A new generation, connected and ambitious, is shaping Liberia's future through art, business, and technology. Education and opportunity are key to unlocking the nation's potential. Liberia's story is one of dreams, division, survival, and renewal. The next chapter is being written with hope, hard work, and an unbreakable will to succeed.